Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Kika Houben, and my presentation is called With My Eyes Wide Open. That's where my drawing came in of my eyes. As you can see, I'm going to present it in three parts. My first part is going to be racism, second part is going to be sexism, and the third part is going to be greed. With my, in the eyes, the idea is that the darker part is about words that just relate to racism or sexism. And then the middle colored part is my main questions that I ask. And then the lighter part is with all the questions I want to ask at the dinner table and my friends and family. And with grief, it's a little bit different because I don't really have dinner table questions I want to ask about that. But I'll explain to you guys that later. We all say ignorance is bliss. But for me, coming out of my ignorance and being aware means waking up and getting ready for change. And that's what we need. I'm going to explain to you guys how I woke up, how I got out of ignorance, and how I gained awareness. This trip has opened my eyes. That's where this piece comes in. I'm going to present this in three pieces: racism, sexism, and greed. The first part that I'm going to explain is racism. If someone would ask me before this trip, what does it mean for you to be white? How does it influence your life? I would probably answer it, not much. I don't really notice it. And that's where I made a huge mistake. I didn't notice it because I am white. I am not discriminated in my society. And even though I badly want to believe that everyone has equal rights, regardless of the color of their skin, I know that that's blatantly false. I always knew racism existed. I was just unaware to the extent. It started in South Africa, where we lived in black townships. We worked and lived there, but spent most of our afternoons in Plattenberg Bay, a wealthy white town. Here, we were provided with a big variety of resources that we did not have in our townships. It was unreal to see such inequalities so close. I mean, Plattenberg Bay was only 10 minutes away from our township. Inequalities are not rare in South Africa. It is a country of which you can still see the scars of the apartheid. I also noticed the scars during my field work. We worked in a public health care clinic in which we took care of only black and colored patients. Together with fellow TBB students, I did a project on the differences between public and private healthcare. Our conclusion came down to the fact that private healthcare had more resources, including more doctors, and therefore a better healthcare system. It was interesting to hear that, and you might ask how this is correlated to racism, and that's actually quite simple. Public healthcare was mainly for blacks and coloreds, and private healthcare was mainly for whites. In India, I learned how racism affected education. During our seminars, we spoke about the American education system that indirectly oppresses black people. It has been proven in studies that black students tend to graduate less and receive lower grades. And then there is college, which is incredibly expensive. Black kids aren't able to pay for all the fees of college and therefore won't be able to attend the university. This ends up in a vicious circle where they don't get fully educated, therefore they won't get qualified, well-paid jobs, so they won't be able to make enough money to send their kids to a good school or college and so forth. In Ecuador, I learned about the effects of environmental pollution on poor people and about the influence of socioeconomics on food, which then again relates back to health. We pollute our earth every day, every hour, every moment. The problem is we don't really see the effects of it, and therefore we don't really change our behavior. But then there are some people who do see the effects of it. Poor people bear the burden of environmental destruction. When you look at poor communities, they tend to have more factories around them, more trucks going through their neighborhoods, and fewer green spaces around. And then there is food. Food is relative. For me, food is assured and also a choice. I am able to pick what I want to eat at dinner, but this is not the case for everyone. In a small town we lived in Ecuador, food meant survival or economic stress. They weren't able to pay for a big variety of food, so 70% of their meals would consist of rice. How you eat influences how you feel health-wise. A lot of people are not able to pay for the fancy, healthy food we eat, therefore cannot live the fancy, healthy life we live. And then again, they are oppressed in society. All of these issues don't even contemplate how black people are treated versus how white people are treated. In Ecuador, our program leader, Chris, had a conversation with Victor, a black boy who lived in Caballon, a black community. Victor told Chris when walking with one of the TBB group members, he gained more respect for people of his own community. Being with a white person made him seem wealthier, therefore less criminal, and so that meant more respected. And so what? What did all these experiences do for me? In South Africa, I realized how I took my healthcare for granted. When something would happen to me, I know I would be taken up in a hospital and I would receive full healthcare. But this is not the case for everyone. In India, I started thinking about how oppressing education can be and how privileged I am that education was liberating for me. In Ecuador, I experienced how food can be solely survival. It is not a choice, it is a privilege. In education to Ecuador, I heard stories there on how locals were treated differently. I somewhere knew that that was true, but it was shocking to see it happening and hear how people suffered from that. I started feeling guilty for being white, and but this also gave me the drive to go home and change something about this. It felt like I was slapped in the face and saw what was already there for a very long time. I compared it to the Netherlands and saw how every country suffers from racism in their own way. In the Netherlands, racism might not be focused on Black people, because we have so few, but more people from color, for example, from the Middle East. When I get back, I want to make this a topic at the dinner table. I want to engage myself with people outside my own white community. I want to ask my friends and my family what it means for them to be white, Black, or colored. And later in life, if I can, I want to fight for the rights of Black and colored people. I don't yet know how, but I know I found my way. First part of how I gained awareness. My eyes are currently open to racism, and now I will explain to you guys how my eyes open to sexism, a second form of discrimination in our society. My view of sexism was very different before this trip. I wasn't aware of the hardships a woman has to face. My mom is, in my eyes, an incredibly strong, successful, and powerful woman, and I thought that came natural. But I didn't know she was working against her odds. The way girls view themselves versus the way boys view themselves seemed natural to me too, until I came on this trip. Just like the pre-TBB version of me, a lot of people think women and men are equal. And maybe we are politically equal, but we're not culturally equal, not even close. There are a lot of rules for girls in our society that I noticed back at home and on this trip. You need to be skinny, therefore you can't eat too much. You need to be hard to get towards boys, but you don't, so you are no slut, but not too hard, because if you say no all the time, you're a bitch. You need to be small in your size, but also small in your presence. Almost every woman can say they have been catcalled in their lives. 1 in 3 women can say they have been sexually assaulted or raped in their life, and 62% of women can say they have been equal slaves. Does this seem like women and men are equal? I grew up in a small town where most opinions were based on looks. And with those looks, we, as women, have to be as skinny and pretty as possible. There's this thought, the skinnier and the prettier. When I went to Greece with my 6 best friends, we all decided we had to lose weight 2 months ahead. We all started eating less, exercising more, and some of us even started growing up early. It was all because in Greece we had to walk around in our bikinis, and while walking around, girls would gossip about our bodies, and boys would see if they could get some. As we would call it in the Netherlands, it was meat inspections. We were objects for boys to get with and for other girls to talk about. On TV, I saw again how a girl has to be small on her sides, but I also saw how a girl has to be small in her presence. At the beginning of TBB, we moved into a South African host family. Our hostess was a cook, our host mom loved to bake. Our host sister, on the other hand, did not want any of her dad's spaghetti or of her mom's cake because she felt like she had to lose weight. She was 14 years old. That's how young it starts, when girls start to feel like they have to lose weight. In India, I noticed what the role of a woman needs to be in a society. She has to cook, take care of the kids, and clean. She cannot be too pretty in her presence. In Ecuador, we lived in a small town, in Callao, where the local boys fell in love with some of the girls at TBB, without even knowing them. This, for me, meant that they fell in love with us solely based on our looks. They objectified us. And not all the knowledge that I gained from TBB came from local people. But a lot of knowledge also came from all my girlfriends on TV. I used to say things like, after I ate a big meal, I used to say stuff like, I feel like I'm pregnant right now. My dear friends, Saoirse, Patty, and Matt did not accept comments like these, and they decided to give us a body image seminar, in which we asked ourselves questions, who do we do it for? Do we do it for the people to whom we are attracted? Why do we do it for them? Will they like us even more if we lose a little bit of weight? If you answer this question, yes. Ask yourself the next question. Are these people even worth it if they care about these 10 extra pounds? Or my girlfriends on TBB gave me a huge insight on what society thinks is okay and what is actually okay. They helped me to stand up for myself and for my friends in the future. As I've said before, 1 in 3 women has been sexually assaulted or raped in their life. Most of these incidents go unreported because girls aren't able to talk about these experiences. Sexual assault usually goes along with a lot of self-blame, and the idea that that's the way boys are. And yes, some boys are like that. In our society, we think a boy has to hook up with a lot of girls, and therefore some boys lose the respect of girls. But this sentence with some boys are just like that, we forget the part that that's not okay. Throughout this whole trip, we as girls stood up for each other, but now it's also time for me to stand up for myself. With this, I hope to empower other girls to stand up for themselves and to be aware of sexual assault. So I became more aware of sexism and the globalization of this issue. What happened back home was not an exception, it was a regular issue. The phenomenon of sour body is real. Objectification is real, and we pass it on from generation to generation, through family, friends, and social media. Through this idea, the skinnier, the prettier, and even the happier. Parents would influence their kids through this idea by indirectly pushing them to be skinny. Moms would talk about their insecurities, which made their kids think that it's normal to be insecure. Friends would start body shaming together, which of course does not do any good either. And then there is social media, where we present girls as objects. In pictures that have to be as skinny as possible, I mean, the majority of girls in the modeling industry does have anorexia. And in most movies that are not chick flicks, the girl is just there to entertain the boys. So what is this idea of a skinny body? Why do so many girls come together to talk about all the negative things about their bodies? Why is it normal to objectify women? Why do we think a girl serves for the pleasure of a boy? And why can't we just be in control and happy with our own bodies? Power woman. But I also believe in the oppression of it. I know we cannot change the mindset from Monday to Tuesday, but at least we can try. When I get back home, I'm going to make a body image seminar with my friends. I will not accept body shaming, and I will spread a confident vibe when it comes to our bodies. I will stand up for myself against boys and against objectification, and I will make my dear ones stand up for themselves too. I will show society what a powerful woman looks like. My third part is a little bit different. It didn't open my eyes like saying racism and sexism. It did open my eyes, but in a different way. It had a great impact on my life. My third part is about grief. You can say that grief is the way we process things. So we grieve over the hardships of racism and sexism, but this is not what I'm going to talk about. In my third part, I will talk about the processing, but then more of the process within. I always thought I had an angel on my shoulder. When I first heard that one of my best guy friends from back home was missing, I thought they would find him because those kind of things just don't happen to me. I was wrong. Pizza, one of my best guy friends from back home, passed away on October 2nd, 1 month in the program. You might be asking how this gave me awareness, and I can't fully answer that question because I don't know if it did. I just know that it made me grow a lot and it made me realize a lot of things. For example, we can't control life. I don't have an angel on my shoulder. I just had a very wealthy and privileged life, and that's why nothing happened to me. And also, it made me think more about what's important in life. Losing someone so dear makes every other problem so little. It made me see my values even more sharply. Over the entire trip, I have talked to his mom, who gave me the advice, time is always now. Take it day by day. With this, she meant it wouldn't help to stay in the happiness of the past or the worries of the future. And yes, right now I am making plans of the future. But I'm not worried. What happened on the way will happen on the way, and we just have to take it at that time. On this trip, I've also gotten amazing advice, and I've discovered things for myself. I surround myself by good people and good things, and that's when I find happiness again. I can never thank my friends on TBB enough for being there for me in a way I can't explain. They have helped me to look at the bright side of life. I also gotten advice from people I've met on this trip. My South African host mom lost her boyfriend in a car accident while he was driving towards her. She was a strong Catholic and told herself that God had a reason and that's why it happened. I found it inspiring to hear, even though I do not think the same way. Hearing her story made me think about how it does get better in time and how everyone has their own way to recover. And then there was Boone. He has been through stuff we wish upon nobody. But even though he went through the most horrible stuff, he still had a positive set in the world and was able to pass this on to other people. He gave us some advice. If you lose a friend, that's okay. It's all a part of life. He was one of those happy people. He was one of the happiest people I've ever met, whilst having to go through one of the most tragic experiences I've ever heard.
I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. Everyone has their own way of grieving, and I think I found my way. I cannot tell you guys, because you will find it your own way and your own time. Maybe you won't, and that's fine too. My only advice is keep on going. It does get better. Take it day by day and think about the good things that have happened. Of course, I'm still sad and I'm still grieving over the loss of my dear friend, but I'm also incredibly grateful I got to know someone here. And someone so dear, so kind, and so caring. He made me smile in a special way because he was a special person. I know that somehow he'd always be around me, but I also know that he wouldn't want me to be sad all the time. He would want me to go chase after my dreams and all of my values, so that's what I'm going to do. And one of these values are sexism and racism, and I'm fighting against that. So, my core values have stayed the same. I will always try to surround me with family and friends because that's what makes me happy and what brings me support. But my views, on the other hand, have changed. I became aware of discrimination issues like racism and sexism. Racism affected me because I became aware of it in a total different extent. I started noticing small things which seemed normal to me before, but completely unfair at this moment. Sexism affected me in a huge way. I got way more insight on how women are treated in society, but mostly I learned that that's not okay. Grief affected me in a way that's hard to explain. I learned how we all need love to recover from such horrible accidents, and though it's hard, we always have to look for the positive things. I can't fully explain to you guys how I will become an effective agent of change on these topics, but I do know that I have opened my eyes, and right now I want other people to open their eyes. Change starts with yourself, and with all this knowledge, I hope to start my own change.
So with regard to women in our society and theater society, from the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands as well, how about Europe as a whole, Western Europe? How do you envision that women are finally going to break through that glass ceiling that still exists?
I think by empowering women to share their stories, that already helps, because we kind of indirectly tell women to all push it down. The fact that most stories of sexual assault go unreported, I think that's very bad. Then I think by empowering women to be able to become, get an important job in their life. Like, why didn't Hillary become president? Question we all need to ask ourselves. And just by empowering them in those kind of ways. And just not, social media I think has a big influence, and maybe more like protesting against that. I hope that one day we can change that. And with telling your friends and family the things that are not okay. Before I came on this trip, a lot of things just seemed like okay to me, but I learned that a lot of things aren't okay. It's not normal to be insecure. That's just something that happens because of our society.
What do you think, to follow up on that, what do you think, how being in a foreign country facilitated the opening of your awareness or understanding of sexism and racism?
I think it opened me a lot, seeing a lot of single moms and just seeing it more happening. But I think it was also a realization that it's happening everywhere, how I thought it was just like my town, and then talking to my friends and knowing that it's almost everywhere. But I think this trip opened my eyes a lot, as in the way that a woman is just, I think I was already always aware of that a girl is oppressed in the way that she has to look this certain way, but I wasn't aware of how she has to act a certain way in which she can't get a powerful job, or she needs to be below the men. So I think this trip gave me a lot of awareness on that.
Do you think that sexism and racism is more obvious in the 3 countries that you visited, or is it that you changed in a sort of internalized way to see it in a more complex way?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's mostly that I see it more right now, but I think, for example, in South Africa, racism is, you can see it everywhere. It was so obvious. And in Ecuador, we went from Riobamba, which was where I lived with an Ecuadorian host family, but they were like white Ecuadorians. And then we went to like an Afro Ecuadorian community, and seeing the differences between that so sharply also.
Thanks.
Thank you all.